welcome back. We're on the food tab section of our manual, if you'll turn to that. It's on food storage. The thing about food storage is that a lot of people think that they can't afford it, and it really depends on your priorities. What I suggest to people is they start cutting back and not purchase things that they wouldn't necessarily need. There's a lot of luxuries that we buy nowadays that we don't necessarily need. And this is why we teach people to be self-reliant, because being self-reliant, part of that is living within your means, getting out of debt, and learning how to prepare for future either weather-related disasters or whatever it could be. You could lose your job, just whatever. And the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we're on the second page, recommends that people start off with just a basic 3-month supply of food that they would rotate frequently. And we will talk more about that later. I'm on the next page, on page 3. It talks about survival nutrition. And people have asked me, when they start storing things and people purchase things at some of the Amish stores or online, say maybe at Emergency Essentials or Shelf Reliance, companies like that, the meat and the dairy is very, very expensive. And your basic food sources, your basic food commodities are much cheaper, your beans and your rice and things like that. And so people ask me, well, if I have to live off of this basic food storage, do I have to become a vegetarian? Well, you don't have to. If you have the money, you can purchase the more expensive food items, but I don't. I have very little of it stored, and because there are ways that you can combine foods to become a whole protein. So I am on page 4. I'm not going to read over that whole thing to you, but it was a long time ago. Way back in 1981, the Stanford University Heart Disease Prevention Program had laid out some simple rules of combining certain foods so that you can get whole proteins in your diet. And you don't even need to have these whole protein combinations in your diet every day. You can spread them out over a several day period. And then on page 5, there's more whole protein rules. And again, I won't go over that. You can read that yourself. But again, if you learn how to combine foods like legumes with your grains, you combine milk with legumes, and vegetables, fresh fruits and vegetables actually have quite a bit of protein in them, a lot more than people even realize. So if people are concerned about the whole protein rule and you really feel like you need to get a whole protein at every single meal, if on page 6, the Stanford Heart Disease Prevention Program spelled out the whole protein rule. So it's a legume plus a grain, or a legume plus a milk product. And there are whole protein combinations down at the bottom of that page to help you. But really, you do not have to eat a whole protein at every meal. And the reason that you don't is that the body does store amino acids, and they will link together to make a whole protein. Whereas if you're actually eating a whole protein, such as meat, your body has to break it all down into the separate amino acids and then rebuild it. And the rest of it you don't need. Now on page 7 is your basic food storage items. And one of the things that is difficult to get in a time when the economy might be bad, or you've lost your job, or there's some kind of a disaster, the first thing that goes on the shelves is your meat and dairy and your bread products. And then you're left with learning how to cook with things that are in your pantry. And a lot of people need their comfort foods during times of stress. And so since eggs are one of the things that go quickly, especially if refrigeration is out, there is a way to use gelatin. This is just a store brand uh, unflavored gelatin. It's also known as Knox gelatin. Sometimes people use this for if their fingernails are very, very weak, and they drink some of this every day. But the gelatin comes in little tiny packets, and there's a recipe in the manual of how to mix this and how to use it as an egg replacement. And what I do is I store some extra of these in a jar, and then I use my little vacuum sealer to get out all of the air. And this should last a pretty good long time. My guess would be is 10 years or more. The other thing that you want in other comfort foods, especially for children, would be your chocolate, your hot chocolate mixes. These last for years and years and years. Some of these flavored drink mixes are very good to store. Now they are high in sugar, so if you have health problems, you want to find something that you can drink. They've got the little drink packets, because if you end up without anything to drink other than water, you may have a hard time, especially getting children to drink any liquids at all. So if you have something like this on hand, that's a good idea. And macaroni and cheese. You always want to have a lot of macaroni and cheese on hand for children. Now on page 8, I have listed the different kinds of things that you really should have stored just in case for comfort. Make sure you have some dessert things on hand. There's lots of different soup mixes that are already pre-packaged that are really, really good. You can purchase some soup mixes and use your vacuum sealer to vacuum it out, and this should last at least 10 years or more. These kinds of soup mixes, if you leave them in the plastic bag, they will not last more than about a year or two. And most of these kinds of things are already 6 months to a year old when you purchase them from the grocery store anyway. I like to collect recipe books. And when my son was growing up, there was the PTA or the PTO, to raise money, they would have all of the parents or the teachers give them recipes, and then they would make these really cool recipe books and then sell them to the parents. And these have some of the best recipes in them, so I always grab those whenever I can. There's some other books that I purchased at Emergency Essentials. They were written by a gal named Peggy Layton, and it's cooking with powdered milk, cooking with dried eggs, cooking with potatoes, cooking with beans and rice. Those are all very, very helpful cookbooks to have. I have another cookbook that I bought at some kind of a church bazaar. It's called Feeding the Flock. Really good cookbook. I've got a Dutch oven cooking cookbook. This is from the Boy Scouts of America. Very cheap. This is a must to have. So your 3-month supply of dinners, I'm still on page 9, that you have a choice of 14 separate menus. And what you're going to do is choose 9 of them, or choose your own. Some of you are on restricted diets. This just gives you a basic idea of what you can do. The kids' basic meals, adults can eat these, and this is a whole meal. So, and I didn't put that on the list, but by all means, this could be one of your meals for sure. Put the 9 meals in the box. Add whatever else you want to put in here. Close it up. You can either tape it up, but I wouldn't suggest that you tape it up. I mean, you all know how to box these things up. Put the date on it and store it somewhere. So you've got 9 days of meals, and then go to the next 9 days when you can afford it. When you get your next box, you can either put the newer box on top, what I would suggest is lift this one up, put the older one on the bottom, and then have 2 stacks of 5 boxes. So it's going to be, what, yay high. It's not going to take up a lot of space. And you will have 3 months of meals for one person. Yeah, if you have a family of 5, it is going to take up more space. But generally, people that have a family of 5 live in a bigger house. So you will have more space. Okay, so that covers your 3-month supply. The next thing I want to talk about is expiration dates. Don't worry so much about these expiration dates. Those are actually a best if used by date. And on the bottom of cans, especially on the bottom of cans, well, sometimes it's on the top, there's always a date stamped. Sometimes these kinds of boxes will have a little date. Those are not expiration dates. Those are best if used by dates. And all that means is that you will get the absolute most nutritional value if you use the food product within that time period. But that does not mean the food has expired. You can still eat the food after that date. It just means that some of the nutritional value starts to diminish after that time, and some of the vitamin content starts to diminish. You will know when your canned products have expired when they start to ooze out the top, at the little edge here. And that's when you know there's botulism in them. Or they could start to bulge. But if your cans are not bulging and not oozing, your food is still edible. And it will fill you up. You will get some nutrition. These cans have been known to be good for 10 to 20 years. So don't throw them away. Some of these kinds of things in this box, one of the problems with this is that weevils can get into them. And again, these kinds of things would last much longer if you sealed them in a jar, or you used your vacuum sealer and sealed them with plastic. So these will expire quicker. These kinds of packages don't expire quicker because they're sealed up nice and tight. These would be, like I said, even though they've got a date on them that says best if used by, if you look at it real close, it's best if used by, not expiration date. These are better protected from bugs than these kinds of boxes. So these will actually last longer than something like this. Okay, and then there's a little bit more information on there about some of your dry good expiration dates. And on the next page, it gives you some more information about canned good expiration dates. The next thing that we're going to talk about is long-term food storage. And what that means is products that last for 25 to 30 years. One of the most popular ways for people to do long-term food storage is these are called number 10 cans. And they generally will come in a box of 6, but not always. Sometimes they'll come in a box of 4. It just depends on the company. And most companies, you can order as many cans as you want. I happen to like the ones that come in 6 in a box because you get this nice little box and they stack up really well. They just seem to be a really nice size. So when you're starting to decide how to do how to create a long-term food storage plan, you definitely want to think about the needs of your family, because if there comes a time when something goes wrong for more than 3 months and you go through all of your 3-month supply, and then pretty soon you're starting to live on food out of cans, and if all you're living off of is beans and rice, that's going to get a little bit boring. So what I suggest is that people think about companies that sell freeze-dried products. Some of the freeze-dried products that I really like, there's one company, and I don't work for any of these companies, just to put that out there. There's a company called Shelf Reliance, S-H-E-L-F, Shelf Reliance. And they have absolutely fantastic freeze-dried products. Lots of fruits and vegetables. And what I like about freeze-dried products is that as soon as the product is picked, they are immediately frozen. They're immediately quick frozen. And then they go through a process where they go through a vacuum sealer and they take out all the moisture, and then they pack it up. And so what you essentially have in these products is a food that has all of the vitamins and nutrients and enzymes that your body needs to build proper muscle and to get the proper nutrition. So it's just like eating a raw, natural product, except it's been freeze-dried. Now, your dehydrated foods have been heated to a certain extent because they've been dehydrated. And once you dehydrate something, you do lose some of the vitamin content and especially what's called enzymes. So if you're worried about nutrition and how do you get the fresh fruits and vegetables, well, these are just like fresh. I've got some peaches that are freeze-dried, and obviously they're dry, but they have all of the nutritional content in them as if you were eating a fresh peach. And they have strawberries and blueberries and raspberries, and it's hard to keep your kids away from these. Well, the adults too, because they're very, very good. Some of the other products that you can get, this happens to be potato flakes. And they're very good, very tasty. So, but these are products that you might want to think about not digging into and putting them on the shelf, keeping them for 20 to 30 years. So I'm going to refer back to the manual on page 14. I'm still in the food section of your manual. And there is a website that you can go to where you can plug in how many family members you have, and you press the calculate button, and it will populate the numbers of the weight, how many pounds of certain products that you need to store for a year per person. And even though in your manual it's 2 pages, if you were to create this list, you can copy and paste it, put it in a Word document, and then it ends up being 1 page. I know you probably can't see it from here, but it'll give you all of the amounts by weight of what you need of all of these different products. And it gives you a nice variety of different things that you can store. And this would be a nice little shopping list that you can refer to. The next thing in your manual, page 16, is called Long-Term Food Storage Basics. And if you'll notice, those have no freeze-dried products in them, no vegetables, no fruit. These are your life-sustaining foods. So if you are wanting to get started on some long-term food storage, this would be where you would start. This is the cheapest way to start. All of these products, except for maybe the milk and the carrots, they are a little bit more expensive, but these are life-sustaining foods. And then once you get some of those, then you can start thinking about purchasing some things that are a little bit more expensive, such as your freeze-dried products. You want to watch for the sales, especially Emergency Essentials. Emergency Essentials has what's called group specials. And they, in the back of they've got like a monthly booklet that you can get. And I'll show you. You have to request this little monthly booklet because they won't send it to you every month unless you consistently do some group specials, either for yourself or friends or your church. And in the back of the manual, it used to be in the front, but now in the back, there's group specials. But you do have to order a minimum of those supplies. So maybe one particular month, like in this manual, there was apple chips. But you had to purchase 12 of them to get that price. But it's 47% discount if you do that. And so you might think, and it's only $9 a can. So say you go in with somebody else and you get 2 cases. What that means is that you have done a group order. You don't have to be any special kind of person to do a group order. And as long as you purchase just one of the items that's on the group special, usually they have about 4 items listed. This particular month they had a survival shovel and some light glow sticks. So they had 5 things. They did have a wheat grinder this particular month, a little hand wheat grinder, and some chicken chunks. I don't know what month this was, way back November 2011. So they had 5 items. And as long as you make the minimum purchase of that one item, then you can order anything else in the catalog, and it's free shipping. And also with the group special, it's free shipping. So and just phenomenal deals doing it that way. So that's just another option and another way to save some money. And there is no tax with Emergency Essentials. But don't pay that shipping cost. It can really add up over time. Okay, so again, back in the manual, page 16, your long-term food storage items. There's a little blurb about wheat down at the bottom. Wheat kernels can last 3,000 years. They found some wheat kernels in somewhere in Egypt a number of years ago. Well, not a number of years ago, it was just a few years ago. And they were actually able to sprout that wheat that was 3,000 years old. So you don't have to worry about wheat going bad, but you do have to worry about weevils getting into it. So these kinds of cans do have an oxygen absorber in it. Takes all of the remaining oxygen out so that the weevils cannot grow. All right, so I'm on page 17. This is just how to start getting a 1-month storage plan, get your variety of things, and then of course once you get 12 of these, it's kind of a storage kit. You get 12 of them, you've got your year. Okay, your next page is your amounts of basic food storage. For your amounts of basic foods for home storage on page 18. Tells you how much you need per pound, your total pounds per person, and then your shelf life is on the bottom. And then right in the middle, some people don't know what a legume is, so I've listed it again for you so you know. Okay, page 19 and 20. This is where you can start keeping track of your food storage. And it can get out of control pretty quickly. You start buying this can here and that can here, and you're putting them all over the place, or you're storing them in your basement, and it doesn't take long before you don't know how much you've got. So it's nice to keep inventory right from the start. And if you've already got some food storage, take out some time to inventory everything. One time I thought I had everything. I spent some time inventorying everything, and lo and behold, I didn't have hardly any salt. I was very surprised. I thought I had plenty of salt, and that's a pretty important item that you need to store. All right, page 21 has to do with wheat. I'm not going to go over that on the video. Wheat is one of those things that it can get so involved. But just know that storing wheat is a very good thing to do. You can grind it and make bread. That's what most people do with it. They use a wheat grinder and grind it. So the next few pages just tell you a little bit about wheat, tell you about gluten and how to pull out the protein part of the wheat is your gluten. Some people can't even eat gluten. page 24, I want to point this out. 4 essential training foods in case of emergencies. You always want to have vegetable oil. You always want to have some grains, honey, and powdered milk. This list came from a man who is German, lived in Germany during World War II when there was massive starvation. And he said that these products were the most important training products that anybody could have. And just very basic things. The next thing I'd like to talk a little bit about, people wonder about MREs. And they are military product. A lot of the military people use these. They are heat sensitive. So the cooler the temperature that you store them in, the longer they're going to last. They could last up anywhere between 3 to 10 years possibly. You just have to make sure that whatever temperature you've got them in, they will expire. Some people also are wondering about some of these energy bars, millennial bars, and things like that. What I can tell you is that most of them are extremely high in sugar, like 30 grams of sugar. They'll give you a lot of energy. You feed these to your kids and they're going to be running around the Red Cross Center. So I personally would not recommend these for storage. Some people have them, but I just don't think they're worth the money to feed. And that is the end of the food section. The next section in your manual that I'm going to discuss is recipes. The first several pages of your recipes goes along with your 3-month food storage plan. And remember, this was 9 days. Hopefully you've got 10 boxes of these for one person. And some of the meals do need a simple recipe, and that's what's in here. The very first recipe is your egg substitute. And I had mentioned earlier that I was going to talk about that. And that was your unflavored gelatin. This just happens to be store brand. You can get Knox gelatin. And then I had told you that you could vacuum seal it in a jar. And this is obviously only for baking, cooking and baking. And gelatin is a binder, and that's what eggs are. They bind all of the ingredients together. And so any recipe, cookies, cakes, brownies that calls for 1 or 2 eggs, you just follow the recipe and you just stir it right in and bake it just like normal, and you can't even tell. And for those of you who are concerned about the cholesterol in eggs, and I know that there's some controversy about that it's in an egg, it's good cholesterol, but some people don't want to eat eggs and they don't want to eat animal products. And this is a really good way to still maybe have a nice little dessert and not have to eat eggs. The other thing, of course, that you can do is purchase powdered eggs, and then you've got something to make some scrambled eggs with. You can also purchase cans of powdered butter and powdered sour cream and margarine and buttermilk, things like that. Okay. So it's several pages of recipes. And then, the next thing I'd like to point out is on page 5, it's long-term storage recipes. And there is just no way I could give you recipes in one manual. It's just impossible. But I found several websites that have the best cookbooks that are free downloads. And it explains to you on here how that you can do this. The Idea Door, Food Storage Made Easy, and Safely Gathered in Blogspot. And what I did was I made myself a little binder, just typed up a cover page and stuck it in. And what's in my manual that is on here, the first tab is a thing called Everything Under the Sun. And that particular cookbook has a lot of information about how to use solar ovens and how to can. One of the next ones is called shelf staples recipes. And that is a lot of pages. But it has some marvelous recipes on how to cook with basic food storage. The next one was called Basic Food Storage Cookbook. And again, quite a few pages in this one as well. But it's how to cook with your beans and your rice and wheat and all of that stuff. And then the next one, the next free download was how to use powdered milk without having to drink it. Put that in there. And that's it. So very, very good recipes. The next thing in your manual is sprouting.